first of all, I don't know if Phil Graham's still here, but something really has to be put on record, that Phil has done a fantastic job leading the commission. I mean, Howard Davis gets the praise and so on, but to lead the team of officials as Phil has, to have such a knowledge of the subject, which he demonstrated this morning, to always be available when things got serious to chat to, and somehow to keep the output secret until 5:30 in the morning was truly amazing. And so I'd just like to put on record really my thanks to Phil, and I'm sure everybody else that's worked with him. He did a great job. So well done, Phil, if you're still here. If not, I hope it gets to you. Thank you. So, the commission was given 3 big questions. There's 2 of them. Is capacity needed? Yep. Where should it be? An emphatic Heathrow. Almost everybody knew that, but they had to come up with the facts and figures behind it, and they've done that. So everything that I say from now on must be seen in that context, that 2 of the big decisions, probably 2.5 of them, they got right. So please keep any niggles I have in perspective. So what did the commission do? Well, they did great research. You have to give them, take your hat off to them for all that they looked at and considered, and they consulted widely. They've produced comprehensive reports throughout. So if I've got a criticism, which I obviously have, otherwise I wouldn't be asked to speak, it wasn't truly iterative. In other words, they took data in, they talked to their own consultants, some of whom are here, and sometimes you got a bit of feedback, but most times it said, right, well, that's it, and that's what we think about it. Not a chance to really go back, as we can do now, with the DFT. So in dealing with those 2 or 3 questions, they came up with 2 big issues. That's, in a way, all that's stopping things. There's plenty of money, there's demand, although I'll come on to that in a minute. So it's emissions and noise. So emissions, well, it's a big, little problem. We know what to do, and it has to be done. Now, the national issue is really, we've probably got to reduce the use of diesel vehicles. How that came about was because of the diesel fuel after the Second World War for farmers, red fuel, red diesel. But we've perpetuated it. And then the government of the day got it wrong in reducing CO2, but unfortunately increasing particulates and NOx. Now, NOx is not particularly difficult. It disperses very quickly, often 50 feet. It's absorbed in the ground and so on. You don't hear very much about extraction as well, internal scrubbings and so on. Sodium chloride, hydrogen peroxide, ammonia, even water will get rid of it. But it is an issue, and nationally it's got to be dealt with. And yeah, as I say, the answers are pretty easy. For us, we didn't really do a good job in the data we gave. We did a sort of mixture of road plans and rail plans, and we had our railway hub to the north, which would have solved many of the airport's emission issues, but too complicated or whatever. So we didn't really do a decent road plan. Well, perhaps we'll get a chance to do that and remove local emissions, i.e. local within 2 or 3 miles of Heathrow is an issue. Because I said, the government and all of us are going to have to deal with it anyway. So that's emissions. So noise, this is where I get a little bit more agitated. The report said you alternate the runway to give respite. And John Stewart yesterday said, it's not the people near the airport that complain. Those 2 things don't match. You get respite by altering flight paths, not by altering runways. If you're going to get respite by altering just runways. You build 4 runways and then just move them around. Don't increase capacity. Capacity is controlled by government. They say how many you can operate. So respite and alternation and noise aren't just dealt with by moving a runway 1,000 meters. It's dealt with further out, and I would argue that our scheme is simpler for gnats and also much easier to implement alternation of flight paths, i.e. approaches using GPS. I'll show you in a moment. And so, if you want to limit noise, put conditions on. You can't have any more slots, as people have said, obviously until you've met emission targets or can meet, and obviously again until you meet noise. So it is being done already. Jane asked me to put this slide in. That's how they do it at Stockholm. I don't know why people remember this slide, but they do. It's about GBAS approaches, ground-based augmented systems. And you see the town at the bottom. It used to complain, and now they fly around it. Nearly all modern aeroplanes have got that system. At New York, even without those systems, one of the approaches, I'm not using this as the model for the future, by the way, but one of the approaches on Canarsie, you line up at a mile out, at 300 feet. So why we line up 20 miles out, flying over the most densely populated areas, I'll talk to my gnats friends a little bit later on about it. It's at Stockholm, by the way, is already happening. So then we come into my biggest niggle of all, capacity. Now, the Heathrow people are here somewhere as well. We played to the rules. We answered the exam question. 180 to 220,000 extra slots. 220 is 700,000. So we stuck to that, and we put that in. These are just niggles, I have to say, about our assessment. So we put that in, 700,000 limit. Heathrow then decided to put in 740,000 movements, which we could get as 3 strips of concrete. You can get exactly the same capacity out of both of them. But they put in a few more, got some more economic benefits, and the Commission came down in favour of them, not least because of the economic benefits. Whereas had we just reversed it, had we not stuck to the rules and Heathrow had, I ask you what would the output have been? So why 740,000 is suddenly the magical number? Because they've ruled out a 4th runway. Actually, with 3 parallel runways, there's no point in doing a 4th anyway, because nobody's ever going to do 4 parallel approaches or departures. So why 740? Why not 800,000 movements is the optimum for the future, or 650,000? And let me just talk about that. Airline people here will know that when slots become available, they apply for them at a busy airport. And then they babysit them just in case they need it in the future. They break even, they make a little profit on it. But if we did 200,000 extra movements a year, that's 44,000 a week. And you've heard about 2 flights a day here or 3 flights a week there. Now, there's 80 long-haul destinations into Heathrow, long-haul. Double it, get 80 more, and have a daily flight. That's still only half the slots that you release. And how long will it take us to get 80 long-haul destinations? In the meantime, they're short-haul destinations. Yes, we need more from the regions in the UK, but do we really need 20, 30 flights a day to Paris? I mean, if the airlines, this is why BA hasn't said anything, they've got enough slots for the next 20 years, because if they need a slot, all they'll do is combine 2 short-haul flights with either more seats on the aeroplane or a bigger aeroplane. Takes time, of course, and they'll release a slot. So why we need those 4,000 is not for the UK airlines, for the foreseeable future. They'll cope. They'll either go to the other airlines, other airports as well. We need it to be able to offer reciprocal slots to the overseas airline. So do you think we'll get into Brasilia, Recife, Salvador, Florianopolis, Santiago, if we don't offer slots back to them? Same with China and India. But with the release of 200,000 slots or so, which can be a government limit, just as a government limit has been applied for many decades, we can offer reciprocal rights and get our airlines to go where they want. And gradually, they'll remove gradually, and I'm talking about a 2-to-1 sort of balance. We'll take short-haul frequencies down, but still have 18 flights a day, say, to Paris instead of 20, and use the slots for long haul. So the economic argument in favor of the 2 runways at Heathrow, I'm not so sure about. I think we could switch it around, and you've got to remember, our plan was 3 to 5 billion less. So picking up the options of why, fortunately, Heathrow was chosen, but why they chose the wrong runway. This is safety regulation. It says in the report it'll take years to negotiate. Now, there's a room full of aviation people. There's people, I think, from the DFT, I don't know if the CAA are here, NATS, airport designers. Will someone please tell me what rule would stop us operating the inline runways now? What is the inhibitor? What rule do we break? So can somebody tell me? Because I've been trying to find out why it will take years to renegotiate something that doesn't need renegotiating. We can do it now. We comply with all the operating procedures is different. But so that's a plea. If anybody knows, please tell me. So that's ruled out: economic benefit, emissions, noise, and safety. So we come to resilience. We've got inline runways, easier airspace management. If you want resilience, and one of the Lee Fisher people here, and we had many debates about this, about why he wanted a second parallel taxiway to our new runway. And when I saw he was pretty set on this, I stopped arguing, because I wanted it too, but for a different reason, is that the second parallel runway is a standby runway. So you've got resilience there. You've got another runway if you need it, just as Gatwick has with its spare runway. It said could have trouble with congestion on the airport. Well, we've actually got more land available, and any peripheral developments would happen out of the airport. I'm nearly finished, by the way. So extended construction. This is our big plus, because you've heard that emissions and noise might limit how slots are released. But how do you spend the money when you don't know if the slots are going to be there? With our plan, you can. You can just build a runway, a taxiway, and operate. We could have it going. If you get permission in 2018, you could have it running by 2020. It doesn't take long to just build a little half a mile of motorway and build a runway. It's all the other bits that take time. Also, we don't take out too little villages. That's where this plan came from. It was about deliverability in a political sense. We don't destroy nice villages. We don't put any new people in the noise envelope. In fact, we take a lot out. We don't need much land, and we don't have to relocate a waste plant. Now, if people don't want a new reservoir and they don't want a new runway, I can tell you they sure don't want a waste disposal plant. So where you're going to move that one, just to the west of Heathrow, not sure. So where did the plan come from? Well, it came from looking at this for 40 years, the capacity at Heathrow, and it came from thinking what was politically deliverable. So whilst I've niggled at some of the details of the report, you've got to remember one big thing, that Heathrow Hub is not a third runway. It's just a long runway. So the Commission did a great job. back to the flight test and flying that we talked about. I've got to do a test. That's why it was Dr. W.D. Lowe, not Jock Lowe, not Captain, because I've been so busy dealing with runways, I haven't had a chance to use one. So I've got to do a test. And if I put the Commission's work as a flight test, they prepared well, they took off, they climbed along, they did everything okay, a little bit of turbulence. They made a great approach to the right airport, and then they just landed on the wrong runway. So, thank you. And by the way, map of the world, we'll see why we're never going to be a medium long-haul hub. Look where we're stuck. You don't go through the UK to get everywhere. So we're not going to get exponential growth. It's going to level off with GDP. That's it. Thank you.
It sounds like you don't think the Commission quite got it with you.
Oh, I think there's been some misinterpretations about the final details of which runway to go for. That's what I said. That was the third question, which runway. The big question was, do we need capacity? Absolutely, categorically, yeah. Where should it be? Heathrow. They got that right. Now, with the Heathrow people, we'll probably talk for a long time about the benefits of one scheme or another, but it's not some of the benefits that were put in the report. The report, in that way, exaggerated the difference.
Now, you have an insight that a lot of us don't have. How did it work? You get onto the short list. I mean, I was a bit surprised. I don't know if you were, but, you know, it took us all a little bit by surprise. Then do they ring you every so often? You've got a point about something that goes in the interim report, noise, for example. Can you ring them up and just say, come and see me, and I want to show you some new figures?
No. What they did is they put an outline of what information they wanted, and luckily we got some generous, kind people who backed us to allow us to do a full technical evaluation and so on, and we did the consultations and so on. So that's what I meant, but it wasn't truly iterative. They sort of said what they wanted. They put out their intermediate report, which had some errors in it, in particular about noise. So we went back, but it wasn't to and fro all the time. What about this? What about that? It was really a batch system.
Because that interim report made you look a lot noisier than the other Heathrow.
It was a misunderstanding. We thought you just had, because of the flight path design, we thought that they'd apply the same flight paths to both schemes, whatever the flight paths were. We're about an airport, not airspace development. In the event, they didn't. They used straight-in approaches right over central London, most densely populated area. So, of course, now, had we had the opportunity, which we did after that report, to put in the same types of flight paths as London, which I'd been talking about all the time, by the way. You know, they borrowed my watch and told the Commission at the time. Then the noise came out pretty equal, except for the last 3 mile. But on and this is one of the points, with respite, on 35% of the approaches, they're eastbound. And on 9 left, there's no respite. It just is that runway all day, every day. So that's how Heathrow can go up to half of respite from the west, because they're only counting 2/3 of the time anyway.
What happens now? Because you're almost talking like you think you might just sneak in there if they have problems delivering the one they've got.
We've had some encouragement. I mean, we can't lose sight of the big prize. It's Heathrow. But clearly, we still think we've got elements that will make our scheme more politically deliverable. So it depends how bold the politicians want to be, whether the DFT analysis follows the Commission's analysis on certain things. I mean, certainly the obvious thing would be to balance up the capacity of both, because they're the same. So it's really into the politics, which Davis' Commission touched on, but how do you do a study of how the politics will be in next year? So we'll keep presenting our case.
Do you think people would be more likely to go for it if there was a similar one around the world, a big example of someone else doing it?
Well, Madrid's almost like it. It's just their runways at an angle. The separation between the runways is the same, and it's simpler. And what I think people have now realised, including the CAA, is that aeroplanes are lighter and have better brakes and climb better. So our system is significantly safer than a single runway operation, where you're doing takeoffs and landings on the same runway. So I think there's now an acceptance amongst the various experts that actually it's not a safety issue at all. We comply with everything. So, but it's still going to be continued to be raised as a question. So.
Jock, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.